Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Paletta. I'm Director of Sales and Marketing here at Exp Technical, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, which is entitled Technology Solutions for the Hybrid Workforce. I have a few administrative announcements, and then very quickly we'll move into the main course of our presentation here. So one thing is that we have a lot of material prepared for you, and we also anticipate quite a few questions. And to facilitate getting through all the prepared material and answering all your questions, we ask you to submit your questions via the Q&A feature on the at the bottom of your Zoom session here. And so instead of the chat or raise hand, try to use the Q&A session, and we'll batch all the questions to the end of the presentation, and we'll address those at the end of the session here. One question that's likely to come up is, will this presentation be available after this meeting? And yes, it will. We'll make the video available, transcript. And for the folks that are attending this session, we'll also create a PowerPoint of the slide deck and send that to you. Maybe tomorrow, but more likely, say by midweek next week. So be patient with me, but I should have that available for you in fairly short order. And then at the end of our question session, we'll also have a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card. So I encourage you to stick with us to the end. There's a lot of people attending this session, but it's not thousands. So your odds are pretty good. It's worth sticking with us for a little while for that. And now, before introducing Tony, I just wanted to start off with a little bit of a quote that I read recently that was interesting. I was reading a book recently called Post-Corona by Scott Galloway. And he is a professor of marketing at NYU. And he writes a lot about trends in the business world and changes in the economy. And he starts that book with a quote. I want to be sure I get it right, but it's a historical quote, but it is, "Nothing happens for decades, and then decades happen in weeks." And nothing happens for decades, and then decades happen in weeks. And the point of that quote, it's kind of a non sequitur, but the idea is that, you know, you think of change as being steady and gradual throughout history, but the reality is that the status quo is what's steady by definition, and disruptive events come about that force change on the economy, on culture, and you know they could be good, good events like the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, or people getting internet access and personal computers in their homes, and it could be an event like a pandemic, and we all went through that a little over a year ago when we had to learn to work remotely suddenly. We may be on the threshold of another similar disruptive event that will cause great change for the business world, and that is that we're going back to work now. And it's likely that we're not going back to the same working environment that we were working in January or February of last year. And what Scott Galloway contends in his book is that organizations that recognize that anticipate change, are likely to thrive during these times. And organizations that cling to the status quo are likely to, go the way of the dinosaur. So the good news is that, just by nature of attending the session, you kind of self-selected or indicated that you're in that prior group. So congratulations to everyone for that. And that's probably a good point for me to introduce Tony. Tony Lesirge will be our presenter today. He is the CEO and managing principal here at Exp Technical. He has many years of experience in IT leadership roles. Before coming to Exp Technical, he was a director of IT for a mid-sized healthcare company. He worked as director of customer operations for a pioneering hosted backup and disaster recovery service. And then here at Exp, he's not just an executive, he's also a consultant to many of our clients. And so it's accurate to say that there are scores of small and medium-sized businesses across the Pacific Northwest that depend on Tony's IT thought leadership to guide them on technology strategy and IT planning. And so with that, I'll hand things over to Tony, and feel free to start when you're ready, Tony.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a lot of content and not a huge amount of time, so I am going to go quite quickly. The goal of today is not to dive in deeply to any single technology or get very technical. We really just want to give you an overview of what can be done with technology to enable a hybrid workplace and a hybrid workforce. And then it's going to, up to you to think about what will work for you and your organization. And feel free, obviously, to reach out to us if you would like some help. So I'll talk very briefly about EXP. We have a good mix of current EXP clients, but also folks who are new to EXP. So I am going to just very briefly talk about who we are and what we do. I'll define the hybrid workplace because I think that's important to set context. And then I'll spend most of my time talking about collaboration technologies that can enable a hybrid workplace and workforce. And I will mention a couple of IT management technologies. There's lots, of course, but two interesting ones that we've been using that enable us as IT professionals to help you and your businesses and manage your people and your devices. And we couldn't have this presentation without at least a nod, a mention of cybersecurity, because it is so important in this new world we're living in with, and it has been pre-pandemic, but especially now with people working from home and in the office and in the cloud. So Exp Technical, our tagline is serving people through technology. We're an IT services company. We work with small and mid-sized businesses. Patty Sather founded the company 18 years ago, and we remain an Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises certified organization. That's a mouthful. And we provide mainly services, IT services to clients in the greater Seattle area, Puget Sound area. But during the pandemic, we have picked up a few clients who are out of state, and as people become more comfortable with a fully remote provider. We're 22 people and growing, and we have well over 200 active clients in industries across the board. We have a lot of professional services, architects, law firms, CPAs, but I put here aerospace to food and beverage to manufacturing. It really is a diverse range of clients that we serve. And the way we go about delivering those services is through custom service plans. This is where we differ a little bit in the way we approach this. There's no contract. There's no minimum monthly fee in order to work with Exp Technical. We can build a custom plan, whether it's a comprehensive outsourced IT department doing all the things you can see up here on the screen, or just a one-off project or augmenting your help desk. We can create a custom solution to meet your needs. So let's define the hybrid workplace before we dive into the technology. A very simple, maybe pre-pandemic definition: an organization with both office-based and remote employees. But this might be a little bit oversimplistic. So here's an expanded, updated post-pandemic definition we came up with. A flexible working environment that supports a distributed workforce with fluid schedules who may be office-based, remote, or most likely a combination of both. And we feel that better addresses what a hybrid workplace is today. And some of the attributes of that workplace, while most people will have some kind of set schedule, hey, I'm going to be in the office these days, I'm going to be working remote these days, it will be a lot more flexible than in the past. There'll be a larger number of people working a hybrid model, working remotely, much more than pre-pandemic. It'll be the norm. And the movement between the office and working from home or remotely is going to be much more fluid and as I said, maybe not so set and scheduled. And finally, why would you want to set up this model for your team, for your employees, for your workplace? Well, we picked 3 reasons. I'm sure there are a lot of other ones. The pandemic has driven the remote working model, right? Necessity, safety. If you're prepared to take on employees who will never or rarely be in your physical office, then you broaden the net that you can draw people from. The talent pool is larger. But maybe most importantly, And as Callie said, we'll send this out. So you'll have the link I put in the PowerPoint here to this survey that Gensler did. People want this. 52% of about, I believe, 2,500 people surveyed in this particular survey wanted the flexibility of working remotely and in the office. So that's the definition. Now let's dive into why you're all here and talk about some of the key technologies that are going to enable this model of working. What we think are at the heart of this are collaboration spaces. Those are the spaces formerly known as conference rooms in most cases. They are going to be critical in successful hybrid workforces and workplaces. They're going to be the hub for communications between your on-site and your remote team. These spaces are going to need to be flexible, allowing for different ratios, blends of people who are on-site and who are remote. And there's an expectation amongst people that there will be high quality audio and video available to them. They get that on their laptops and their smartphones and their tablets. So why not in our conference rooms? And then finally, ease of use is going to be critical. And I know all of us, including us IT folks, I'll admit it, have struggled at times with Zoom and Teams, etc. Those calls, is your mic on? Can you see me? Are you muted? All of that. So making these spaces as easy to use as possible is going to be critical. And the technologies that are going to help us do that are enumerated here. So at the heart of it is the software, the meeting software that runs the collaboration tools. Probably the first two are the most common we see, Zoom and Microsoft Teams, but there's plenty of others out there. If you're in a highly regulated government contractor business, then maybe you might look at Cisco WebEx because they have a FedRAMP certified solution. Cameras, I mentioned audio and video are going to be critical. So you might consider buying a more sophisticated camera, something like a PTZ point tilt zoom device that has very high quality, can zoom in, has a remote control. We like Logitech, Polycom, or the Poly Studio series. We've had good experience with. Something like that all-in-one device to the right of the camera section there, an all-in-one mic, speaker, and camera. I think that's a Poly Studio, that particular one might be useful. And then maybe even more important than video is audio. It's one of the common things we hear is that audio quality is poor or doesn't work well, and it completely shuts down communication. So we've had good luck with, again, Polycom, but also Revo Labs gear, which is they got acquired by Yamaha, who are renowned for high quality audio products. For mics and speakers, they can be as simple as a USB device or as sophisticated as a purpose-built phone that actually can run Teams or Zoom on the device itself. And I'll talk more about Zoom rooms and Teams rooms and devices in a minute. And then, of course, displays. You've got to be able to share your content, your video. So displays as simple as a TV on the wall, could be a projector, could be just a simple monitor. There's lots of different ways to achieve that. So I mentioned Zoom rooms and Teams rooms, and there's go-to rooms and other types of rooms kits. And what these are pre-certified bundles of equipment that have been tested, work together, and you can deploy in your collaboration spaces, in your conference rooms. And They typically include all the things we mentioned, plus, in the case of like a Zoom room, some more sophisticated software. So with a Zoom room, if you get the Zoom room license, you can additionally have a controller, usually runs on an iPad or an Android tablet that is smart, right? It's aware that it's been booked. You've booked it through your Office 365 Outlook or your Google Workplace or your Exchange server. It knows who scheduled the meeting, when the meeting starts. So when you walk into that room, you just hit the start button and the camera comes on, the screen comes on, the audio starts. So this is a way to make it quick and easy for people to start their meetings and get up and running quickly. Microsoft has even a large format display, their Surface Hubs, that, they're touch screens, they run Teams directly on the device, they have a camera. So these types of kits are going to make it easier for people. And if you are prepared to make an investment, obviously they're more expensive than just sort of building your own with off-the-shelf components, then they can be well worth it. And I mentioned we're going to talk about real-world examples. So here is a real-world sort of creative solution we came up with for one of our clients. The need that they wanted, what they wanted to achieve, this is an architecture firm, is they wanted to be able to collaborate on a physical, printed drawing. And they wanted to be able to mark it up and talk about it, draw on it from wherever they were. So we put together this bundle. I'm going to point out some of the key things. So Zoom was running this from a software perspective. We had a workstation down here, the computer running it, capable of doing running a 3D model, etc. But what makes this setup different is, firstly, the cameras. We have a high quality webcam, point tilt zoom with as a remote control for it here. But we have a second camera. This is a document camera. You'll see these commonly in a school. And this is designed to share a physical, piece of paper, a drawing, a document. And we were able to set this up so that both these cameras could work concurrently and share the video feed of the printout as well as the people in the room. And then in terms of screens, we've got our TV over here, big, but then mirrored, we have this Wacom tablet with a very sensitive touch screen and stylus. So the usage was people could be physically in this room. They could draw with a pencil on the drawing. They could draw on the drawings using Zoom annotation with the Wacom stylus, or they could be remote in their home on Zoom and still use the annotation feature to draw on this. And then once all of that was done, they could take a snapshot, an image of the drawing with Zoom, save that. They could take multiple images as they were working on it. And so this is just one example of solutions that can be put together to meet specific needs of organizations. Other collaboration technologies that we're seeing used a lot. Everyone's working on documents, and being able to share those documents and simultaneously co-author them is a very useful feature. So if you're using Office 365 or Google Workplace and you're storing your documents on Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive or Google Drive, you can do this. You can co-author or simultaneously work on a document with a colleague. And you will see in real time what they're typing, where they are. If it's in a spreadsheet, you'll see the cell that they're in. Very useful for collaboration wherever you might be. Online whiteboards, Zoom, Teams, both have online whiteboard functionality, but there's more sophisticated purpose-built solutions out there we're seeing and implementing. Two of them are Miro and Jamboard. They allow you to again, collaboratively, simultaneously be on the board, put, rich media, video, audio, screenshots on the board, make notes, collaborate. Instant messaging, I think everyone is very familiar with this. It's taken over for many of us as the primary way to communicate with our teams versus email. And obviously Teams and Slack are at the forefront of that. Many of the meeting applications, the GoTos, the Zooms, they also have built-in chat. And then online project management solutions is the final one I'll mention here, which we've seen an uptick in usage of. 10 years ago, it was a Microsoft project and project server and a data center. Now that's all online. Microsoft Project Online, of course, still works. But we've got many more. Smartsheet is a very popular one. Trello, we've seen used a lot. Asana, the list goes on. But if you want to be able to, work on a project collaboratively with someone from anywhere, check off tasks, move things around, these solutions are going to be what you can use. Almost without exception, our clients want to share files with each other, internally and externally. And the days of the traditional file server in the office are slowly coming to an end. So people want to be able to do this without, a VPN and a server. So there's a ton of solutions out there, as you know, Dropbox, SharePoint, OneDrive, the list goes on. If you're an architect, engineering, or construction company and use Revit, it's really only one game in town. BIM Collaborate Pro by Autodesk will work if you want to do work sharing for your Revit models. And that will allow you to share internally, externally with contractors, partners, third parties, and use Revit collaboratively. But probably most interestingly on this slide, we've got two hybrid solutions we'll call out. Ignite is a purpose-built cloud file sharing platform like Dropbox or Box. Pretty sophisticated, very secure. And they have a hybrid, or two options for hybrid solutions, actually, where you can run effectively an Ignite server in your office and have all the benefits of, a local server speed. It could be mapped to a drive like, an M drive or whatever you're used to. But at the same time, that data is then synchronized out to the cloud, and someone at home or in a coffee shop or on the other side of the world can have the Ignite client running on their laptop and see those same files all the way, up to and including a file that is locked by someone working in the office if it's not a co-author capable file. In real time, they'll see that who has that file open, even if they're in their office working off the server versus the cloud side. And similarly, with Synology, which is actually a brand of NAS, a network attached storage device, a server type device, we can effect a similar solution and have done for a number of clients where, again, in the office, they're working off a traditional map drive, but that drive is then synchronized out. And in the case of Synology, it supports most of these common file sharing applications with their Cloud Sync app. So you could share to Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive or Box using that sync technology. So those two are really relevant in a hybrid model where you want the best of both worlds. I couldn't do this presentation without mentioning the as-a-service cloud solutions. I'm not going to spend much time on this. These predate COVID, obviously. Software as a service that we all use today with 365, et cetera. And infrastructure as a service platforms like Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, Rackspace, et cetera. What I think is becoming interesting and achievable and more affordable, and we're beginning to see uptake of, is the desktop as a service or virtual desktop infrastructure in the cloud. Another real world example, we had a client, another architecture client in this case, who mid-pandemic was moving office. They wanted to downsize. They wanted to be able to work from anywhere, including in the new office. They didn't want to invest in a whole bunch of new equipment, storage, servers, if they could avoid it at the next refresh cycle. And in this case, their internet at the new space wasn't even ready for their move-in date. So if we had moved all their servers there, remote access would have been a serious problem. So we moved them wholesale to the cloud. We're talking servers and workstations using Microsoft Azure Windows Virtual Desktops. One of the reasons that was so important for them in this case is because having their data right next to their workstations was important for performance, right? Opening a large drawing or 3D model can be really slow and maybe not even work over a VPN or slow link. So we put their desktops in the cloud as well, high-powered graphics accelerated desktops, and they were able to connect to those from anywhere, a cheap laptop, even a smartphone, and work on their models and work from anywhere. And that works in a hybrid environment too, right? You can walk into the office, plug in a laptop to a dock, work in the office, or maybe you have a desktop or something like a zero client, right? A very small device that just enables you to connect to your remote desktop. And then you're at home on your home PC or a laptop you've taken home, but you're working on the same machine wherever you are. The experience is identical because you're simply remote controlling a Windows virtual desktop in the cloud. Again, won't spend a lot of time on this, but many of our clients do still need secure access to their on-site or in-office systems. So, common solutions, remote desktop and remote control. At the beginning of the pandemic, almost all our clients had our remote monitoring and management agent software on their machines, on their workstations, ConnectWise Control in this case. And we opened up at no extra cost when the pandemic hit that remote control functionality to all of our clients so they could immediately begin to work from home but leave their desktop in the office. VDI, I mentioned it in the context of cloud, but VDI will also work on premise. We have a number of implementations using VMware Horizon, where the desktops, again, are running in a server room rather than the cloud in this case, but essentially they're accessible from anywhere, and it's the same experience from any device. And of course, VPNs in order to connect people to their offices that are working remotely. Finally, in this section, I should mention voice and phone systems is what I mean by that. So when the pandemic hit, many of our clients' phone systems, traditional on-premise phone systems, were just not ready to extend to people's homes. And so we've done a large number of migrations to hosted VoIP solutions. And again, these are not new. These obviously predate the pandemic, but the uptake and movement to these solutions has definitely increased. And two that have become really popular are Teams. I don't know if everyone knew, but you can actually use Teams to, 10-digit dial out to any phone anywhere in the world, and Zoom as well. And the reason people especially like these two is that they already use these applications for, meetings, for instant messaging, for collaboration. So it's like a natural extension of these applications. So we've been using the Teams solution for a good number of years at EXP. So my phone is pretty much any device, right? It's my laptop, it's my home PC, it's my smartphone, it's my work phone. And I can have a handset, a traditional phone handset on my desk, or a conference room Teams phone, traditional style as well. There's plenty of other options out there, of course. Two others we've used successfully, Jive, which we got bought by the GoToMeeting, LogMeIn folks. So that's a good one. 8x8 is a sophisticated solution if you need call center, sophisticated call routing technology. Getting towards the end, but I did want to mention a couple of interesting technologies we've been using to help people become, to help manage our clients' technology and to keep them secure and enable them to continue to work effectively. Mobile device management or enterprise mobility management or endpoint management, again, pre-existed COVID and the pandemic, but has matured and has extended beyond, the initial technology was aimed at smartphones and tablets. Now it's really extended down to, laptops, surfaces, even desktops. And two big ones on the Microsoft side, you've got Intune. On the Mac side, you've got Jamf. There's plenty of others. There's IBM has Mass 360, VMware has Workspace ONE. So there's lots of solutions out there, but what these all do is they can, from anywhere, as long as the device has an internet connection, apply policies, deploy applications, and secure the devices. So a great example of this during the pandemic that we implemented for a couple of our clients who are private schools was students all left school in March last year with a laptop. And those laptops were, previously managed by the local infrastructure, by Active Directory, by group policy, essentially tools that are only available when those laptops were in the school on the network. So we helped a couple of clients deploy Intune onto those devices that their students had at their homes. And one of the first things we did was deploy TeamViewer, a remote control solution, so that the IT staff and teachers could support the students who were having problems with their devices. We were able to then deploy applications, shortcuts to Schoology, things like that. So just one example of how a MDM solution can be effective in this type of environment. And then when those devices came back to school in the last couple of months, now they can be co-managed, right? So you've got your local infrastructure, Active Directory, et cetera, that can manage the device on-prem, working together with Intune in order to apply a blended set of policies. And that's how it can work in a hybrid model. And finally, I want to mention device provisioning. This is a pretty cool example of what we can do with Microsoft's Windows Autopilot. And what this essentially does is enable us to automatically provision a Windows machine. So here's a good example. We have a client, it's a retail chain. They have locations up and down the West Coast. And traditionally, if they open a new store, they had to send all the new devices, order all the new devices. They'd come to Seattle. They'd have to be prepared by IT, boxed back up, shipped to the new store, or to an employee at home. With Autopilot, we're able to skip a lot of that. So once all the preparation has been done, we've prepared the back end. We're now able to order a device directly from Dell or CDW or HP, wherever it might be, Lenovo, and ship that directly to the store or the employee. As soon as they turn that on, because the vendor, the manufacturer, knows that it's Autopilot or has turned on the checkbox, this is Autopilot enabled, here's the ID, that device is going to join what we call the tenant, the Microsoft tenant. It's going to start applying policies. It's going to skip the standard out-of-box experience. And then Intune will kick in and start installing applications. And ultimately what you get is a functional device that that person can now log into without IT having to touch it. Okay, I know I'm running over time, but I did want to briefly mention security. And by no means is this an exhaustive list of things that we recommend, but thinking in the context of this new hybrid workplace and perimeterless environment, right? There's no longer the traditional, there's a firewall in my office, everything behind that firewall is protected. These days, your data and your people are in the cloud, they're at home, they're on their local machines, so it's everywhere. So here's our top 5. This was from a blog we did recently. There's many more things we recommend, and this is by no means, like I said, a full list of what we recommend, but our top 5 security controls for a hybrid workplace. Multi-factor authentication is by far and away number 1. We think that of the, phishing attacks, ransomwares that we've seen out there, the vast majority could have been prevented if MFA was enabled. And it needs to be enabled everywhere, right? So not just Google Workplace or Office 365, both of which will allow you to do this at no extra cost, but is it enabled for remote desktop and VPN and VDI and any other way that you can access your data? Number 2, it's the people, right? It's the people who are clicking on the links or opening the attachment unknowingly that are causing these incidents. So training, security awareness training is critical. We have a video on our website that takes you through some basic security awareness training that's freely available. There's solutions out there that are specifically designed to train your people. They do simulated phishing where they'll send phishing emails, see who's clicking on them. Then we can target those people with additional training. KnowBe4 is one we've used successfully. Email filtering is number 3. Advanced threat protection is a more sophisticated type of email filtering that will do more than just strip out viruses, right? It's looking for phishing. It's using AI and machine learning to look at these messages and decide if they're safe or not. Microsoft has a great solution, Barracuda. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, AppRiver, etc. But the point is you should subscribe to something more than the basic level of service to filter your email, because email is where most of these attacks are originating. I'm sure everyone on this call has antivirus, but most probably don't have next-gen antivirus or what's becoming known as EDR, endpoint detection and response solutions. And again, these are behavioral solutions. So they're looking using AI and machine learning at what's going on the device versus just looking for a file that they know is bad. Is this device suddenly changing hundreds and thousands of files on my network or on the local computer? Looks like a ransomware attack. I'm going to stop that. That's how they function and how they differ. And finally, backups. If you get hit, you're going to want to be able to recover and recover quickly. And when we think about backups these days, again, in a hybrid workplace, we need to think beyond the server in the office. We need to think about the data on Office 365. We need to think about the endpoints that have data synchronized to them. If my laptop running OneDrive gets encrypted by a ransomware attack and then synchronizes that all up to the cloud, that's going to affect other people as well. So backing up your data wherever it may be. Datto is a good solution we've used for 365 backup. They also have a great backup and disaster recovery solution if you have servers. And of course, I've gone a few minutes over time, and I want to leave a few minutes for question and answer. So I am going to stop talking and open it up.
So Tony, I have the question that came from just your last point. So you mentioned backup and disaster recovery. Do you care to speak just for a brief minute on also the importance of test restores and perhaps a ransomware simulation as well?
Yeah, it's a good point. Something we've started to do recently. So, and actually, this has been something that EXP has been doing for a long time. Backups are critical. We've seen too many times in the past, the green checkbox that the backup worked is there, but when you go to actually restore, oh no, it's been overwritten, the tape's corrupted. We're talking a while ago, but the disk, the cloud copy, whatever. So the point is that testing is critical. And we've started doing for a couple of clients already, actually, these simulation exercises where we will pretend a ransomware attack has happened. What are we going to do? What's the critical data? How are we going to restore it? Do a test restore. Who are the critical people? Who do we need to communicate with? How are we going to communicate with them? So, yeah, good question, and something we definitely address.
Sure. And we have a few others. One is, why would somebody want to use Active Directory and group policy when that can only be used on machines on site, whereas Intune can do both? So why not always use Intune?
It's so MDM, especially cloud-based, is a different, it's designed very differently. So the main reasons you might want to use both, or what, keep using group policy, for example. Group policies typically get applied quicker. You can do still to this day different things with group policy than you can with, say, an Intune or a Jamf. So what we're seeing, and I think it will get there. I mean, ultimately, the answer to the question is probably, an Intune or other MDM solution will probably be able to do everything and maybe won't be needed. But in larger environments, I would suspect, versus the lower end, there will probably still be a place for, being able to very quickly apply a group policy, and every machine that's connected with a fast connection to the network will get it, very quickly, versus, you push a button in Intune Azure, right? And you're like, okay, well, that will probably apply sometime in the next 12 hours when that device happens to come online, or, it's not that instant, always connected, fast connection. So that's some of the reasons why you might use both.
Okay, and I think we have time to squeeze in a couple more. And actually, there's two that are related. So let's just take them in order. What's the difference between remote desktop and VDI? What does VDI cost approximately for a 20-person architectural firm?
Yeah, good questions. So let's start with the first one. Remote desktop is typically where you have a workstation, a traditional PC is in an office, and Windows or Mac has the functionality to remotely control that. And that's remote desktop. VDI tends to be server-based, right? So you will have a very powerful server in the office, in the cloud, that can run multiple machines on a single server. And on top of that, there's things to manage profiles so that you can have multiple people logging in to a different machine. Maybe it's not the same machine they're logging into as it would be with remote desktop, but always getting the same experience, right? They're still getting their icons and their desktop and their shortcuts. So, it's like VDI is like a data center version of delivering that desktop, essentially, hopefully that answers the question. VDI, for an on-premises implementation, most of what we've done has been in our architecture clients where we're, doing not only desktops, but graphics accelerated desktops. So we've got shared GPUs, graphics cards. That can really get pretty expensive from a capital standpoint, right? I have to invest, we're talking 50 grand for the server to run 20 people or so, maybe more these days, but more people, I mean. But so that can be an expensive proposition. And again, which is why WVD's Amazon Workspaces is attractive, because you can do that on a utility computing model, right? You pay by the hour for that desktop. You know, for a 20, so we have a 25 odd person firm paying in the region of 4,000 to 5,000 a month for hosting not just their desktops, their servers as well. That, you know, they have a firewall, they have a VPN up there, up to the cloud, and that's graphics enabled desktops as well. So you'd pay, you know, obviously there's many different in Azure, for example, there's many different specs of machine that you can subscribe to, right? So the higher spec, the more per hour, the more the cost.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more. And also, I'm assuming you can see the Q&A too, to make sure that there were two that were very similar, and I think we caught both of them in the context of the last response. But we have time for one more question, and that is, can your security reviews include home environments?
That's a good question. It depends, I guess, is the answer. Normally, we have, you know, if we're talking to a client about home computers, for example, home use, we'll definitely recommend they have a policy, you know, a written policy, so that if someone is using a home computer, for example, then they must, you know, have current antivirus. It should be an up-to-date operating system. It should be fully patched, etc. Can we extend our services to a home? If our clients wish to do that, absolutely, we can do that. You know, the trick is, and again, you know, this comes back to Intune, mobile device management, remote control, is being able to manage and secure that device wherever it is, right, including in the home. So if we have that visibility, those tools, that enables us to much more easily extend those reviews and controls and things into the home. But absolutely, you know, have we been to people's homes during and before and after the pandemic to help them get set up and work? Yes, we have done that as well.
If you do have additional questions, again, we'll present the slide deck to you, and video and a transcript will be available in fairly short order. You can reach EXP by either visiting our website, or there are Tony's email address and mine appear on this slide. You can connect with us through our website as well. And I would like to thank everyone for coming, and again, congratulate you on having the foresight to recognize that there are some changes brewing here. And that's all I have. Tony, did you have any parting words or any final statements?
No, other than to thank everyone for attending, and we look forward to seeing you soon.